All right, here is lesson 4.03b, independent practice. We are solving these equations that you're going to see the exponent to. We call these quadratic equation. And the idea is you want to find out what number you raise to the power of 2 that will give you 578. Now, the best way to understand this is every time you see these type of equation, imagine a square where the inside of the square is 578. And they are asking you how much are the sides of the square. That's what you have to imagine. Okay. And we did this last class. And that's basically we're doing the square root of 578. That's what basically we are doing. We're doing the square root of 578. So what you're going to do is we're going to use the calculator to help you do this. Okay. So I'm going to do the square root of 578. And you can see I got these long decimals. And when you get those long decimals, it means 578 is not a perfect square. So that's when we decided to do the tree. So I'm going to do the tree. And when I do the square root of 500, when I do the factor tree of 578, I notice 578 is even. So it means I can divide by 2. So I'm going to take my calculator. 578 divided by 2, and you can see that I got 289. Now, before you go crazy with a calculator, how to do? We already know 2. We cannot do a tree, but 289 we can. But before you go with a calculator, going crazy finding a number, always check if one of the numbers of the tree is a perfect square, which is the column you see here in blue. And you can see already highlighted 289. 289 is a perfect square. So that means it can be made by 17. 17 times 17 is 289. So I'm going to put here 17 and 17. And I know 17 is a prime number, so I'm going to circle it. Okay, so now, like we did the last class, my answer here, the value of x, is going to be what numbers repeated twice? Oh, 17. Okay, so I'm going to put 17 here. What numbers not repeated twice? Oh, 2. So I'm going to put it inside. Okay, and look, we did the square root without using a decimal. Now keep in mind when you're working with square roots, you always have to answer the positive answer and the negative answer. So the other answer here is going to be negative 17 square root of 2. And this is how we do problem number 1. Okay, here's how we're going to do now problem number 2. Okay, very similar. Here we have a quadratic equation, an equation where we have this exponent 2, and they're asking you what number you raise to the power of 2 that will give you 864. Now, if you're having trouble understanding the equation, imagine a square where the inside is 864, and they're asking you how much are the sides of the square. That's what you have to do. And last class, I told you when you see this, this is basically we're doing square root of the number inside the square. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you're going to use your calculator and you're going to do the square root of 864. And you can see you got a long decimal. When you get these long decimals, it means we're going to have to do the tree. Now 864 is even. So that means I'm going to try to divide 864 by 2. So I can start making my tree, and you can see it's 2 times 432. Okay. And then I notice, let me see, every time you do the tree, always check if one of the numbers, I know 2, you cannot do it, so I'm going to circle it. But always check if the other number, 432, is a perfect square. And you can see it's not. Okay. I'm going to keep doing the tree now, 432. And I was thinking maybe I can divide this by 3. Let me see, 432 divided by 3. Yes, look, I got 3 and 144. I already know 3 is prime. I'm going to circle it. But 144, if you look at the table of perfect square, is a perfect square. You can see right there is, you can see I highlighted, and you can see the number we're going to be using is 12. So this is 12 times 12, and I'm going to stop here because when I'm doing square roots, I'm looking for a number that is repeated twice, and 12 here is repeated twice. So my answer here for the value of x is going to be 12 because that's the number repeated twice. And then what number's not repeated twice? 2 and 3. Okay, but these two numbers are multiplying, so 2 times 3 is 6. And I got the answer for this equation. Now, keep in mind that every time you do square roots, you have two answers, the positive and the negative. So my other answer is going to be x equal negative 12 square root of 6. Okay, so every time you do square roots, you always have two answers, the positive and the negative. Let's go to the next one. Here's question number 3. Again, I'm doing a similar one, and we're working with quadratic equations. These are equations where the x has an exponent 2. They're asking you to find what number you raise to the power of 2, and it will give you 256. To help you understand what does this mean, imagine a square. Inside the square is 256. So they want to know, they're asking you to find out what number you put on the sides of the square. Remember, the sides of the square, they're all the same. So what number you put on the sides of the square. So when you multiply, it gives you 256. And like we did in the previous class, this is square root. So we're working with square root of 256. And for this, I suggest you take the calculator, okay, and do the first in the calculator. And you can see I got an exact answer. So my answer here, so the number, the question marks, which is the x, is going to be 16. However, remember, there's always two answers every time you do square root. So the other answer is negative 16. If you multiply 16 times 16, you're going to get 256. And if you multiply negative 16 times negative 16, you also get 256. That's why we have two answers. Okay, let's go to the next one. Here's question number 4, and same idea like we have done so far. We're working with these quadratic equation, which is an equation that you're going to see the letter x with an exponent 2. And basically, this equation is like the picture, the square you see above. Imagine that inside the square you have 361, and you want to find out what number you write on each side of the square. And remember, each side of the square here are exactly the same. What number you write on each side of the square. So when you multiply, it gives you 361. Like we did in the previous class, this is square root. Okay, so we're doing square root of 361. So let's take our calculator. I suggest always start with a calculator and do the square root of 361. And you can see it's 19. So the number that goes on each side of the square is 19. The size of the square is the letter x. Okay, so the question mark is the x. And we found out it's 19. And remember that every time you do square root, there's two answers. So the other answer is x equals same number but negative. Why? Because 19 times 19 is 361. And negative 19 times negative 19 is also 361. Okay, let's go to the last problem. This last problem is a word problem. So a square has an area of 121 feet. By the way, this is incorrectly. We need to say square feet, okay, instead of plain feet. And the question is, what is the length of the size of the square in feet? So basically this is, imagine this problem. I'm going to change the number. Instead of using 121, I'm going to use a different number. So imagine that a square, so here's the picture of the square, has an area of 144. Okay, and they're asking you how much are the sides of the square. Remember, all the sides of the squares are exactly the same. Basically, this problem is this equation, x squared equal 144. See, the picture and the equation are the same thing. Okay, we're talking about the same shape, and you're looking for the size of the shape. And like we did in the previous class, when you see this picture, okay, basically you're working with square roots, because square roots, imagine a square that you know how much is the area of the square, how much space is inside, and you want to find the missing side. So I'm going to do square root of 144. And take your calculator. You can use the table, but I want you to start practicing also with a calculator. Do the square root of 144, and you can see you got 12. So the question mark here is the x. So x is going to be 12, but keep in mind there's always two answers when you do square root. The other answer is negative 12, and here's why. 12 times 12 gives me 144. See, the number I haven't read. But also negative 12 times negative 12 is 144. So you can see we have two answers. Okay, I hope this helps.